Welcome to the Eruption section. Eruption is a white tea from Fujian province. So today we get a chance to really focus on kind of one of the best of the white teas. So it's of the category of silver needle. And by the end of this session, you'll hear lots of reasons why lots of people pursue this tea. So before we do that, let's start with a little bit of shop news and interesting things that have occurred this week. Jonathan forwarded to me an article coming out of China. And the article was basically saying that they're ending the official national title of tea master producer. That's such a mouthful. What it really means is they were handing out titles, and there's a specific department in the government that does this. It's the same department that deals with intangible cultural artifacts. And you get various things when these titles are bestowed on you. So one of the main things about this is you get fame and fortune. You're listed in registers at the national level. You can use this title, and this title again refers to the processor of the tea. It does not refer to the brewing of the tea. So a master processor. And in addition to getting recognition, you also get a stipend. In addition to a stipend, sometimes you get a posse. So there's lots of things that come with these type of titles. And some of the titles are so relatively broad that you have this discomfort or this friction between local language, local experts in processing, and then our favorite third category, the LCSers. Because everybody looks at situations, if they're not in the C of that situation, the SEA of that situation, then they think, well, geez, let me just dip my toe in, get a little benefit from this, take a little breeze in the sun and so forth. In other words, LCS. So these titles come and go. Some don't. The intangible cultural icon, I think, will never disappear. But titles like this disappear as soon as the government recognizes one of two things. One is all of a sudden you've got this proliferation of these titles. And that means you have all these people seeming to get to this coveted position. And maybe they're really good, and maybe they aren't. In other words, when so many people have a title, does that enhance the value of a title, or does it decrease the value of the title? Well, after a bit, it decreases, doesn't it? So this sense that everybody can be a master producer, that's just so false. Master producers really, and this is important for today's session, because master producers are really lineage holders. And what do I mean again by lineage holder? Well, they've got family roots in doing the tea. They have techniques. It would be the equivalent of your family. You're able to trace back 10, 12 generations, and there's a relative who's famous, say, baker, and passing down secrets over the years, and each generation adding a little bit, reshaping a little bit. Same thing with the tea, except that these lineages are much longer. So let's morph over. And I wanted to bring that up to you because this is why sometimes historically you see, oh, this person had this title and then they didn't have the title. Well, that's a change in policy. it's not a change in skill level. They were either really skilled or they weren't. And the title didn't make them skilled. Lack of title didn't make them unskilled. So again, I'm going to morph into lineage, and we're going to talk today about Mei Bojan. So Mei Bojan is one of the alleged founders of white tea. This is a complicated subject also, because as soon as you start talking about founders, every time you drive a stake into the ground, what happens? Some archaeologist or some tea scientist or some historian, hey, wait a minute, that's not the earliest stake. Look over there. That's an earlier stake. Yes.
Who are the givers of the titles?
The national government. So it's a committee within the national government that gets recommended. The way the government works, and this is loosely, of course, because every situation is slightly different, but generally speaking, from the county, there are recommendations up to the province. The province sifts through those. Oh, yeah, these are the people we want to honor. Those go up to the national level. They sift through them. And these are committees made of experts, in quotes. In other words, people who are deeply interested in or experts on or promoters of tea and everything related with tea. So at any rate, we get this guy. He ran various businesses. Some people say that he really had a key hand in expanding the scope of Silver Needle. Oh, that's a mouthful, because that implies something I didn't mean to imply. So by scope, what I meant really was an understanding of Silver Needle, not the actual processing scope. He actually was good at processing, apparently, also. So at any rate, this is a lineage guy. And so people in that family are still prominent in the Fuding area. And they're prominent in the white tea, and they're trying to train future generations the secrets of white tea. So it's people like this who all of a sudden, as everybody begins to notice, oh, these guys know stuff. And it's you spend time with them, they know a lot of stuff. All of a sudden, they're the ones who are recommended for these titles. And eventually some of them become so-called intangible cultural icons. And so it's really an honorific. Money comes with it. Some of these titles, a posse comes with it. So it's a good thing if you're able to achieve this. And you certainly want to keep it narrowed down, at least from the top's point of view, narrowed to true iconic experts. You don't want to have people who aren't really of that ilk in getting those type of honors. So they take real close look. They do a lot of research. It's not easily granted. All right. So in about 1875, white tea, and we've talked about this, starts to take off. And again, if you ask me, well, when was the process of white tea invented? What a headache. This question is so headache-filled because every historical document you see coming out of China doesn't say what I would say. They would say, yes, Silver Needle was known in the Tang and Sung dynasty. So, you can say things in a certain way in Chinese which have great implications or lesser implications. To me, this is a throwaway phrase that says, yes, the plant itself, the varietal itself existed in that time period. and was famous as part of tribute tea because that area was part of a tribute tea area. So those statements are all true. As soon as you make the logical conclusion from all of that, oh, white tea really existed at that time. Why doesn't my understudy tell me that white tea existed at that time? Because as best we can do, that would be a false statement. White tea is a process. It's not a color of the tea unless you directly identify, oh, this is used to be green and now it's turned white. We have an albino version. Oh, okay, that's white tea. But that's not the process of white tea. So that's why when talking about when something started, it becomes so difficult. It's further complicated by the following. So, and I'm going to get to a story, but before I get to that story, I realize I've got to give you a little bit more background. So in general, the kind of rhythm of white tea, as it's talked about, is it's medicinal. There are lots of nice legends about it. And by the way, most of the legends touch on some sort of curative effect of white tea. You have very famous traditional Chinese medicine houses who use white tea as part of formulations for certain products. So you get this aura of, ooh, this is good stuff. And it's good for the body. Generally speaking, thought of good for fevers, sore throats, skin issues. So anti-inflammatory actually is what we're talking about, right? If we were to use today's language. Okay. So there's this story about there was an illness in the fooding area, and people were looking for herbs to see if they could deal with this illness, and they found this cave. They go in this cave and they have they found, in quotes, a green bud varietal, which they picked, and it cured all these issues. And so this has become a very famous story about this one bush that was in a cave. So there is the implication today that this bush still exists. So let me explain the reasons why that probably shouldn't be in your mind. And here's why. Because in the 1930s, a very famous Chinese tea scientist went to that cave, described the bush, described very clearly what it looked like. And then subsequently, in the 1950s and 60s, another scientist went there and said, oh, you know what? My description doesn't match this description from the 30s. So what had happened? I don't know is the factual answer. However, I think I do know. What happened was that original bush died and another one was planted. And there's no big deal about that. I mean, when you tell stories about bushes that last for ages and a certain curative effect is linked to them, you kind of want to give lineage to that to prove that you're correct, right? And so this, I think, is why this has existed this way. The other part of that's odd about this is green, the actual title of green needle. And by saying it like that, it implies that it would look like almost any other tea bush that you ever saw. And it also implies, because the complicated part of this is historically there's reference back to something called the same thing. It implies whatever this was, if it was actually picked in the Tang and Sung dynasty, it was done like all the other teas, like a green tea. It had an unusual look to it. It had lots of trichomes on it, but it was done as a green tea. White tea is a modern invention, apparently. Next week somebody's going to publish an article which will prove me wrong, and that's okay. I'll raise my hand and yeah, didn't look back carefully enough. I'd rather do that than promote something that I just don't think currently is understood to be true. Okay, so again, all of these stories are linked to some sort of curative effect. Well, why in the 1950s, 1957, I think specifically, when the 10 most famous teas were created, a list at the national level and celebrated. And Scarlet Rope gets on that list, and Dragonwell gets on that list, and Green Sanctity gets on that list, Wong's Creation is on that list. There are no white teas. How come? Well, I think more than anything, this was an honorific list to what was currently the most popular and famous of the most popular teas. Everybody in Fujian province understood white tea is pretty good and we like this stuff. So in 1982, when they redid the list, this was corrected and Silver Needle was put on that list. So, and again, if you look in Chinese sources, it really looks like it talks about the medicinal and meditative sense of white tea. And through the years, that medicinal has never left. So let's talk about that in a minute, because this is the last of this white tea session for this set. And I do want to touch on this medicinal for a bit, because actually there's some real science connected to it. So you got the folk sayings, first year it's tea, third year it's a treasure, and then the seventh year it's medicine. So this is one of those sayings or aphorisms that's said in Chinese language around white tea. It turns out that by storage mechanism, that's actually a form of processing. Okay, let's back up a minute, because you've never heard me say this like this. So to get to 7 years, you got to store, right? And if you store it properly, what's happening is there are actual chemical changes occurring in the tea itself. And they're beginning to measure these changes, and it's significant. The anti-inflammatory constituents are increasing. They increase. The taste constituents change because you have non-enzymatic oxidation. You also have other enzymatic processes that are occurring. And one of them, as it turns out, has to do with theanine. And this one, I touch upon these things because I look at a lot of material. And I see stuff and it kind of catches my eye. And then unless I see it again, I don't remember. This thing I've seen before. And this time I really focused on it. Because there are so-called EPFSs. Well, keep it there, because the actual name is something like 25 letters long of what this refers to. And these 7 compounds, as it turns out, increase dramatically as the tea ages. And it turns out that they now are honing in on specifically what they're good for. Prevention of diabetes, slowing or prevention of heart disease. I mean, we're talking about big time science here, medicinal alleged medicinal benefits. So the first time I think I saw any mention of this was in 2018. And, from that time, I kind of remember it's something like inflavanol, flava-3-ols, and then a bunch of other letters. And what these are apparently compounds that occur at 100 times greater strength in white tea than any other tea. So this actually turns out to be significant. So the next time I encountered these was probably around 2024. And some of the same scientists who pointed this out in 2018 were saying, well, wait a minute, let's create a modern processing modality that might be able to capture this quicker or capture it more intensely. And also, let's do some more studying. So this is the area where things are really exciting in tea science, because these are things that mean something to you over time. Okay, let me switch up to one more thing here, because I know this is great working with Americans, because Americans have such great math skills. They look at things like loose leaf, silver needle, and then they look at things like the silver needle cake and they're thinking, okay, well, the price is, they make a calculation. Instead of asking, why would there be a price difference? So as it turns out, and this is information that over the last 8 years has been available, but now there's more focus on it. Turns out when you cake these white teas, what happens is also like a Maillard reaction. And so you have a change in the chemical constituencies of what's going on within the tea. And therefore, the health benefit profile afterwards, after it goes through this reaction, is different. And in fact, it's intensified in terms of anti-inflammatory. And so, actually, when did they first start making things like cakes, white tea cakes? They really started in the 1960s. So this is new. This is relatively new. And at that time, they were responding to special requests. And now, again, there's much more attention being paid to this, because there's a recognition that, in fact, there are alleged health benefits that go along with this. Yes.
So you mentioned caking of white tea. It seems in a larger context of aging of the tea. So
Yes.
does white tea age in an accelerated rate or in a different fashion when caked?
I assume in a different fashion. Oh, versus loose leaf.
Versus loose leaf.
I say, now I'm with you. Yes, it does. Apparently, when you cake it, there's different things that go on because the heat level is different. If you loose leaf it and you store it properly, and by the way, okay, this is actually a great question, because I realized I didn't explain enough the statement storage is a process. I should have also put along with that caking as a process, because of the differences that go on. Because when you cake, you've got to reheat, right? And then it's got to cool off. And then as the enzymatic processes occur, heat builds. And as heat builds, that's where there's a difference versus loose leaf. Is there so much of a difference that, oh, gosh, if I get this white tea cake and, let it sit around for 7 years, I know I'm going to live 1,000 extra years. Now, how many extra years if I take an equivalent amount of silver needle and just let it sit around? Is it going to be only 900 years? So my point about this is science can point us towards there is a difference, and it looks like it affects different things in terms of the health benefits versus the stuff that's you're getting benefits from both. To say one is greater than the other, it's a little bit hard to say that right now, but all indications point to you're going to get some bigger benefits from the cake. Yeah.
Is there anything in terms of the study that scientists have done regarding storage? Are there any actual takeaways yet? For example, do they know that if white tea is stored for 12 years, it's more likely to have a higher level of blah, 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 particular elements versus on a young, a 1-year-old white tea? Um, any definitive takeaways?
Yeah, there are definitive takeaways. They say that the anti-inflammatory agents age linearly. In other words, every additional year, you're getting significant additional benefit. Taste is more complicated because, and this whole thing is made very complicated by one additional factor. So let's talk about the additional factor and then we'll talk about taste. The additional factor has to do with where are you doing it? What temperature are you maintaining it at? What humidity are you maintaining it at? These things matter. If you can do a bad job of aging white tea. It's pretty robust, but you can do a bad job. And if you age it like they age some of the fermented tea cakes in southern China, you're dead in the water because you'll have mold growing within the cakes. That's not a good thing. That takes away from the overall value and presumably the overall nutritional value. So storage is very important. They're experimenting right now. They kind of already know what the parameters should be, but now they're experimenting in a scientific way to kind of see if they can say something even more definitive. And so again, from the taste perspective, we know that by aging anything, if you age it faster, and this is now we're getting into quarks and Einsteins and all that stuff. Age it faster. What do you mean age faster? Great question. Aging faster would have some element of heat in it, wouldn't it? So in other words, if you age it on average at 80 degrees versus on average 65 degrees, is there going to be a difference? And will you speed through phases that ought not to be sped through? In other words, will you create less of a benefit by aging it faster? And the answer is yes. Clearly, yes. And that's what they're focusing on now to try and find the sweet spot. I don't think yet anybody exactly knows the sweet spot. I will tell you, TCM practitioners who are using aged white tea are looking for a certain level of protection for that white tea. So again, if you're in the 80 range, no thank you. If you're somewhere in the 60s, yeah, that's pretty good. If you're in the 50s, we don't know because almost no one ages their or maintains their storage is in the 50 degrees. Part of that is that's a really expensive process. You have to have a different type of facility to do that. And I think part of the scientific testing right now about this aging as a process, I said that well, as storage as a process, I think what they're trying to do is really put some markers down for everybody. It's not practical for most of us, and it doesn't seem right for most of us that it should be in the 50s. It does seem right that it should be in the 60s because you do want these changes to be going on. And it appears that in the 60s, that's a pretty good sweet spot. All right, there's a ton of stuff related to IT, but you know what? I'm not supposed to do the talking. The tea leaves are supposed to do the talking. Oh, and the tea master can do the talking too. So there's two areas where talking is supposed to happen. So without further ado, I want to see if we can get the tea master over here and have an eruption. So without further ado, Bijou, the tea master.
Good morning，早上好。Yeah, we do white tea. Okay, called silver needle, but eruption. Yeah. Okay, John, help me. I use it.
So you see what the tea master just said right now? Called silver needle. And what that means is it's the silver needle grade. But all grades within silver needle are different, right? Location, terroir, and so hence the term eruption for this. And I think you'll understand why after you have it. Normal setup, actually all you need is two mugs, strainer, 170-degree water. Make sure you heat the cups. Here you demonstrate rhythm. Not in a hurry. It's steady.
Fooding.
Yes, it is fooding.
Fooding.
So stuff like this, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh, lamp, yeah, yeah. Yeah, okay. So we have 5 grams here is 2 minutes. Pouring it back in the kettle so she can direct the flow. Pouring flow is what I'm referring to. Okay.
Jennifer comments already, the warm, dry leaves smell like sweet grass.
Ah, yes. The warm, dry leaves smell like sweet grass. On the money. That's what they'd say in China. The other thing to notice about this is look at the intensity of the trichomes on this. It's really amazing. And you can really best see it from the top. It's a little harder. You can see it if you look at the actual water, but you see it best, I should say, when you look at the top. What level of plant are they looking for in this? They're picking plants that are over 30 years old. So in China, you get all of this gradation depending on type of tea. Oh, 1,000-year-old tree, oh, hundreds of years old in the Wuyi Mountains. Or here, you're looking for bushes that are over 30 years old. Why? Because the buds tend to be plumper. They tend to have more trichomes on them. So this is what the tea enthusiasts every springtime who love white tea are looking for. They're looking for this hand-picked, handcrafted tea. Sun withered. The other thing about sun withering, by the way, is it does things to the internal composition. They're discovering more and more, particularly related to cell sap and then permeability of the cell. Bunch of things are going on that turn out to be really, really good as for producing benefits, particularly anti-inflammatory benefits. Timer has gone off. Tea Master is here. And look at this thing. So what's great is that you have proof because you saw it actually brewed that there were tea leaves in this thing. Because look at how clear this is. In fact, you might be afraid that, wow, not enough in here. Let's enter I will enter the quality rating. Stringency in the mouth, very strong. Aftertaste, significant. Energetics, we're still working on that. Take a second entry. This packs a punch. Even though it looks like it should, it really does. And if you look carefully, look at all the trichomes in this. You'll see when you do it yourself. Your turn to brew. It's in bag number 3. Mark Eruption. Set your timer for 2 minutes. 170-degree water is best. Get into your rhythm. Nice and steady. So that, well, I'll tell you about some other things in a minute. Just watch how this is done. The leaves. Beautiful. setting the timer. So there are lots of things one can talk about in relationship to white tea. And white tea is a little bit different than some of the other styles of tea because they've really built out the terraces and done all the work in terms of experimentation. So when you of arranging the fields, so when you go there, it doesn't look like you're okay. And good. What you experienced was tea master censorship. You know, I said a bunch of words wrong. So she said, you know what, let's just cut that out. You know, talk about this seriously. And okay, so I'm on it. So you have bushes that are planted around rocks. You have actual trees that they're trying to make it almost like a forest background. So it's really, really cool and very different than some of the other places. Okay, and we're getting down here.
2 seconds.
Hmm?
Yeah.
And take a look again at the beauty of the trichomes in the cup as you're brewing it. All right. Timer's gone off. Tea master's separating the tea from the tea water.
Please.
All right, and it's your turn.
All righty. I see, Rob. The scent, Rob says, the scent is round and moist. That roundness continues in the taste, but it is roundly astringent.
Great comment. Rob talks about it being roundly astringent. Absolutely true. That was the first thing when I took that first sip, whole mouth, feeling that sense of astringency. Outside of that, he talks about it being round and warm. Great comment.
Jennifer comments, it's grounding, as are many of the white teas.
Grounding, yes. Jennifer made the comment that much like other white teas, this one is grounded without question. And you're going to feel some energetics along here that you haven't felt yet because I'm suddenly getting those energetics. While you're thinking about things, every time we go up to this area, we go to many new farmers. And it's funny because I think it's influenced by all the science coming out about white tea. I think what they're trying to figure out is what sorts of new ways of processing can they continue to get this increase in these health or producing compounds and see if they can speed it up. So we have lots of talk about that. Yeah.
Jennifer observes, it's warm and full in the mouth, and then after I swallow, my mouth is cleansed and dry. I then start to crave another sip.
Oh, yeah. Great comment. Crisp and dry after Jennifer swallows, and that leads her to crave another sip. I particularly like this part of the commentary because, yeah, it's warming, as you said, in the mouth right away. And then that sweetness, along with just that speed of grounding, I think makes you want to drink really, really fast.
Jen E finds lovely scent of freshly cut lemon verbena and light fresh herbs, but nothing overpowering. It's light and playful. Tea water is round and more deep, but all the same flavors are in play, none of them overwhelming. The energetics are definitely there and hit early. I already feel more awake.
Hey, this is great.
Yeah.
Jen says this has already woken her up. There is lots of subtle hints all interplaying evenly. She led with lemon verbena and talked about the fact that even that they are playfully interacting together, and even as it goes down, there's just this scent of energy, a scent of what was the
Herbs.
last part?
Fresh herbs, nothing overpowering, nothing overwhelming, but kind of a more round deepness to the tea water.
More round deepness to the tea water. I love that description because it looks like it shouldn't be this way, and yet its behavior is extremely potent, but balanced. All right. I think we will, yes.
Jen E adds,
Yeah.
lemongrass would be another good flavor to call out. I just have a lot of lemon verbena in my yard.
Lemongrass as a flavor to call out. I like that. Yeah, there's this scent of lemon-like citrusy, which without the citrus part. It's the lemon flavor part to this, and that's a good observation. Lemongrass, lemon verbena, great observation. All right. We've come to the end of this white tea series. You started out with Resplendent, which is also from Fuding. We went to Zhenghe with New Paths, and we ended up with Eruption from Fuding as well. This was the only needle that we did, and it gives you that power of the needle. It's nice to taste these in a serial fashion like this, because this thing of all three for me, without question, has there's a power behind this. Yes.
Jennifer asks, there's a faint flavor of flowers in the back, but not at all like jasmine. And then Jonathan observes it tastes like a more refined compass, clean and crisper than compass, but equally floral and delightful.
Yeah, some hints of floral going in the background. Jennifer picked that up, and Jonathan said it's like a more refined compass. Compass is another one of the needle teas. And again, with the floral playing in your mouth, all of those things are true. This is, when we got this, I would say from our perspective, this was one of the most unique of the needle teas that we've ever had. And we like it. The eruption is not an accident, the naming of that, because it's an eruption of flavor, an eruption of astringency, and then kind of an eruption of energy within you. Yeah.
And Jonathan observes it's so viscous as well.
Great comment. Let's go back. Jonathan observes it's viscous, and it absolutely is. And I think that's also linked to you drink it, and all of a sudden your mouth is empty. Hey, let's get some more of this in my mouth. And the quick drinking nature of this. I think of all the teas we had during this series, I clearly have drunk this the most quickly. All right. Great commentary today. We love this series, and we love the series because we got a chance to show you things in a little bit of a different order, and to kind of highlight some things, and also talk a little bit more about alleged health benefits, because keep your eyes open. White tea over time, I believe, will overtake green tea in number mentions in popular press for healthy benefits. So are we gonna continue to do white tea next week, or should we move on to another color? Let's move on to another color. Maybe we should move on to emerald. Yeah, let's do emerald tea. Oh, wait a minute. The script said emerald. Oh, it's green tea, emerald gates. So that's what we're gonna do next week. I think we're gonna do green tea all 3 sessions. Maybe it's in this world of confusion and chaos. Let's have some unity. So that'll be tea number 2. And where do we find unity? In the undergrowth. Your responsibility this week. Stay healthy. We'll see you next week. Take care now. Bye-bye.